So can everyone see my screen?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Right. So my name's Craig, as Rachel's introduced me. So I am a waste transformation officer at Herefordshire Council. So my job now really is to look at the future waste collection services across Herefordshire, because there's a lot of change coming. But mostly at the moment, I look at waste reduction projects. It's far better to not produce waste in the first place than it is to actually, actually have to find something to do with it, really. So I have been at the council since 2014. My first role really was a waste and recycling officer, so dealing with the nitty-gritty, the day-to-day issues with rubbish and recycling across the county, and being that sort of point of contact between residents and our contractor, sorting out problems and making sure that the service runs smoothly. And I hope you'll all agree really that the service is pretty solid that we have at the moment, and serves a really good purpose. So I'm going to go on to what we do now. So at the moment, the way I've structured this talk really is to take you on a little bit of a journey from what's happening now, what we do now, to what happens or what's going to happen come 2024, and then what we're doing as well to sort of reach some of the targets that we have, and how we can work to support that really. So at the moment, obviously the local authority has a statutory duty to collect rubbish and recycling. We offer a household rubbish and recycling service with a green commingled recycling bin, so all of the recycling is collected together, and black bins, and then the same with black sacks and recycling sacks. So if you're all Herefordshire residents, you'll all have one of those or a combination of those. We offer commercial waste collection services, so the council has we have to basically offer a commercial waste collection service, but commercial waste collections are separate from business rates. So if you're a business, you're free to choose a supplier based upon your needs. So we have a really successful and really well run commercial waste service, and we have lots of customers. And again, that's something that's going to be expanded in future, and we hope to grow in terms of the recycling services we offer. We offer a clinical waste collection service, so that's sort of hazardous clinical waste for medical reasons. A large item collection service, so we call that the bulky item collection service. So if you ring us up, you can book a collection of 3 large items, for instance, and we will take those away for you. Household recycling centres, so one of the 6 across the county. We have a booking system in place now, which came in during COVID and will remain, and that serves the wonderful purpose really of making sure that only Herefordshire residents can use those sites. Due to the proximity of some of our sites to other counties, obviously we were getting a reasonable amount of rubbish from neighbouring counties, which obviously Herefordshire taxpayers have to foot the bill for, but also we have those great sites for us to use. And then waste disposal. So our collection contract is a sole collection contract for Herefordshire. So we organise the collection of your waste. So we come and pick that up from your home, or we organise the collection of bulkies, for instance. The waste disposal, we have a joint working agreement and a joint contract with Worcestershire. And so we use the same energy from waste plant and the same recycling facility as Worcestershire. So just a quick line on what happens when your waste is collected. So it goes to one of 2 transfer stations in either Hereford or Leominster. It is bundled up, and then it will either go on to be sorted at EnviroSort, which is our recycling sorting facility, or it will go on to EnviroCover, where it is burnt to generate power. And as of April this year, 99% of Herefordshire's waste is incinerated to generate power rather than being landfilled. So this is EnviroSort. So when your recycling goes to EnviroSort, it goes through a mechanical process essentially and that sorts it out into the various different fractions of recycling. And so people ask us, say, oh, I don't know, a plastic washing up bowl. Why can't I put that in my green bin? It's plastic, it's got the recycling symbol on it. It should be able to go in my green bin. One of the answers is it's because the process really dictates what items can be recycled in your green bin, as in the process is designed to recycle the most commonly found household items. So shape and size play a large role, obviously, in how those recyclables go through the process. And so to explain the process a little bit better, I hope it will work. I've got a little video to show you that we had made a few years ago, and that will actually show you kind of the process in animation. There's some music in the background, but if the sound doesn't work, it's fine. The video's subtitled, and you'll still kind of get the main kind of view of what goes on. Some of you may have visited the site as well. If you haven't, and if you want to, by all means, as the Herefordshire Green Network, let me know, and I can arrange for a visit to EnviroSort for you. Okay. So I'm just going to play this now. So I hope you can still hear me. Unfortunately, it seems like the sound's not working, but essentially we made this video as really from a curbside to what happens to recycling at the end. So just a little bit of sort of support for our crews there. You can see they collect from over 900 properties a day. Some of them walk 12 miles. So when people sort of, if you want to stay fit, it's a very good job being a binman. So here's the journey that your recycling takes once it's been baled up at one of our transfer stations. And there's Gracian, he's the manager at EnviroSort. So as you can see, sort of the scales of waste we're dealing with, it doesn't look, in a sense, very clean there. And obviously that's one of the reasons we do a lot of work with our residents to tackle contamination and to try and make sure that residents are only putting the correct recycling into their recycling bin. We'll come on to that in a little bit more detail in a moment. So as you can see, it's loaded into the mechanical process. There is still an element of hand sorting. So, you wouldn't believe some of the things that those staff have to deal with on the line. And then as you can see, so the glass is broken. The glass drops through the process to be used again. Other items fall over the top. And again, that's one of the little fact that comes up there about the energy saved by recycling rather than manufacturing from new, something that we obviously try and get across to our residents. So again, magnets to suck out cans. And so this is really interesting. The plastic's separated by an optical sorter. So one of the reasons we don't accept black plastics is because optical sorters won't sort black plastics because there is no refraction from that plastic. So when a laser is fired at it, it absorbs that rather than refracting that light back to the sensor, and the sensor then knows what type of plastic it is, and it blows that plastic off with a jet of air into the various containers. So there you go. That's a nice little video we had made, really. And it kind of gives our residents and gives everyone a little bit of an idea of the journey from your recycling bin from the curbside all the way to being sort of final recyclers to go off for processing. Okay. So this week is recycling week. this was just a little bit of a knowledge test. If anyone's brave enough and wants to kind of speak up, please do. So Recycling Week's theme this year really is let's get real about recycling, and one of their aims is to target things that residents commonly get wrong and commonly don't put in their recycling bin that potentially shouldn't be there. So we are doing a roadshow this week. So we were in Ledbury yesterday, we are in Ross-on-Wye tomorrow, and then Leominster and Kingston on Friday, Hereford Hightown on Saturday for Recycling Week, getting out and about and talking to the public about recycling. So if anyone has got any questions, come along and see us. But I just wondered if anyone knows whether soft plastic should be able to go into their recycling bin or not. Anyone want to answer that or put it in the chat or?
No.
Yeah, brilliant. So that's exactly right. So no soft plastic in the recycling bin. And again, you saw some of the mechanical process there for virus sort. So soft plastic causes a problem because it can potentially get prevent the mechanized process from working as well as it should by getting tangled. A couple of things on soft plastic. One, I hope everyone knows now that supermarkets are starting to take soft plastic, and I hope everyone knows to kind of look out at your supermarket, or at your local supermarket, for the soft plastic return boxes. I know Tesco's have large sort of wheelie cases, you know, that would the metal cages they would use for groceries. The Co-op, for instance, have sort of little bins behind the tills, so have a look out for those. Batteries, anyone know what to do with batteries rather than put those in your black or green bin? We've had almost 5 fires this year caused by laptop batteries or lithium-ion batteries being placed in bins, and it's really dangerous for our crews and for our residents really. So they can go back to your supermarket or your point of sale or one of our household waste and recycling centres. And then plant pots, this is one that comes up as well. And I know, Richard, you sort of mentioned garden waste before, and I just wanted to raise this one. As long as your plant pot's not black and it's of a normal-ish size, they can go in your recycling bin now, providing they're clean as well. So we've had that clarified. So as long as they're not black, and I think you've seen as well, I'm not a massive gardener, but I think I've noticed a sort of a shift change really within the industry away from black plant pots towards a more sort of the terracotta-y coloured or green coloured. Seems to me anyway, when I see a garden centre or, you know, see friends and family with them. So this is EnviroCover. So this is where our non-recyclable general rubbish goes. So this is our energy from waste plant at Hertlebury in Worcestershire. It accepts over 200,000 tonnes per annum of waste from Herefordshire and Worcestershire. Generates 17 megawatts per hour of electricity, and it's enough to power 38,500 homes. The great thing about this is from now on, from April onwards, 1% of our waste in Herefordshire only goes to landfill. The rest goes to here. So it's being used to generate power, which is a massive step forward, I think, for us, rather than being reliant on landfill. And even the outputs from this, so the aggregate kind of that's generated from so I carry on.
What happens to the emissions?
So they go through a chemical scrubbing process, the same as other sort of power stations, you know, whether it's gas or coal. So there is a process to scrub that, a chemical process, and they are closely monitored by the Environment Agency. There's thresholds set for sort of emission levels. This falls well under that. And you can see, and I haven't checked recently, but it used to be that there was on the EnviroCover website a graph where the emission levels were monitored, and you could watch that and you could check that for yourself. So yeah, it goes to that process. as I was saying, sort of the outputs can be used.
We've got another couple of questions on that.
Yeah.
Somebody's saying, are the filters cleaned or changed regularly?
Yeah, absolutely. So it undergoes a period of maintenance a year, hence our kind of 1% to landfill in a sense. Most of our waste at the moment, though, so essentially maintenance only happens in September every year, where full maintenance happens, and part of that is replacing those filters, etc., to ensure that they're still clean and working and functioning as they should. And then what's happened recently is obviously our waste has been stored in the bunkers there, ready to burn once the maintenance process has been completed.
Okay. And the other question was, where does the fly ash go to?
Yeah, so I was trying to get onto that, sorry. So the ash from it, I'm not sure if everything is used, and I can check that, but some of the ash, so the metals are recycled from that, so that goes through the process to recover any metals from that bottom ash. And then it can be used for road aggregate as well. And again, I'll check this, but there used to be a company called Carbonate that used to visit the site, and Carbonate used to it's a really advanced technological process to combine that with CO2 and to generate kind of a breeze block type substance. So really it's as efficient as possible in terms of using even the ash generated from the burn. But that's something I can find out about again in more detail for you guys and pop across you know, an answer.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. So so that's kind of what happens now. But what's next, I suppose, is the most important, really. And why are we changing? Well, we can't all sit here and kind of pretend that there's not a climate emergency. So there is. And so the council has declared a climate emergency, wants to be carbon neutral by 2030, which that's supported by targets that are in our new integrated waste management strategy that was developed last year. Our collection contract comes to an end as well in November 23. And there's going to be an extension on that to allow us to launch the new service in June 24. So we'll be launching in summer, which makes launching a brand new service easier in terms of the logistics of delivering containers, etc. And legislation, so the Environment Act. So the government, it's a good piece of legislation. I'll go on to talk about that in more detail, but we want to get ahead of the game in terms of that, really. So we want to introduce some of the things that the government are going to ask us to do, you know, as soon as we can, because we think that they're worthy of doing. So some of the things in the legislation I want to talk about. So basically, the legislation really is a kind of a package of measures to bring around a more circular economy. So the idea that we can no longer treat waste as something to be buried or burnt, in a sense. What we need to do is to feed into a process where a waste is treated as a resource. And so actually what we're doing is developing products that can be reused. They go through the design phase, obviously. They're designed with recycling and reuse in mind, or repair, you know, when we're talking electronics, etc. That feeds into the production and manufacturing process, the distribution, consumption, collection, which is obviously a local authority's responsibility from a household point of view, recycling, and that feeds back to the raw materials again, with a smaller and smaller fraction of that being what we would call waste. Okay. A couple of the things that the government want to introduce. So I talked about sort of the design process. So I have a slide on extended producer responsibility. In other words, the government wants to put some onus back on manufacturers, really, and producers to think about the end of life of their product, etc., and make sure that they're producing something that can be repaired or recycled. Okay. Another thing that I'm sure people here will remember is deposit return schemes. So bringing back and looking at the deposit return scheme. One of the reasons the deposit return scheme is something the government has pushed is to tackle littering, essentially. So they're hoping that by introducing a deposit return scheme, it is something that you know, that will help curb littering. Consultations have been running on these for a long time. Consultations have been responded to, and the government are working through the answers now. So we'll see where they go with that. It'll be interesting to see, what happens, because the logistics of doing that, obviously, given the amount of containers, are very challenging, and it'll be interesting to see what happens, really. Another aspect of what the government wants to do, and I'm sure that those of you that have travelled and have lived elsewhere will testify to this, is have some semblance of consistency across the UK. So weekly food waste collections become a mandatory thing, or if not, it's potential for the government to fine or whatever for that not being the case. There's a stronger push towards a higher degree of segregation of recycling as well, so that you're generating a better quality product. And so that's something that our service will tackle, and I'll show you more about that. So there are also further targets, but I wanted to look at our target. So what's in our integrated waste management strategy for Herefordshire. So this document's online as well. And again, Rachel, I can send you around some useful links sort of tomorrow or later in the week, so you can share amongst all the members and everyone that's attended, and you guys can have a look in your own time. So carbon zero Herefordshire, again, that's what we want to achieve. 1% to landfill as a target in that, which we have achieved ahead of time. We want to lower the residual household waste per year to less than 335 kilos a year by 2023. I think we're over 500 at the moment. And we want to hit those national recycling targets as well that are in that strategy. So ensuring that we're recycling more and more of the waste we collect in Hereford from our residents and from our household waste sites as well. So, okay, we know about the change. We knew about what potentially, was going to happen. But we needed to see what our public thought of, our proposals, really. And so before I talk about what the new service is going to look like, I'd just like to show this, really. So public consultation from December 2020 to February. As you can see, a significant number of residents responded. A clear option was favoured, but the key, I think, and I obviously preaching to the converted here, but 86% of residents, 86% of our respondees thought more needed to be done to reduce rubbish and increase recycling. Okay, so there's a strong will amongst the public for change and to do more. So this is what our new service is going to look like. Okay. So this is obviously an infographic, really, that shows what the service will look like if you're on a bin collection service. There are going to be alternate options for those properties without room, for instance. So at the moment we have about, I think it's between 4,000 and 7,000 properties in Hereford that use a recycling sack. So there will be alternate options of a reusable sack for them, and for potentially some in our high towns, market towns, where they simply have no room, we may be looking at a continuation of the clear plastic recycling sacks that they have now, so that we're kind of limiting the impact upon residential or pedestrian areas for shopping, etc. So we're going to go to a 3-weekly system, essentially, but with a weekly food waste collection. So you'll have an additional bin will be delivered to you, and that will be a blue bin. And so that will be for all of your, so this infographic's the wrong way around, sorry. So I need to get this corrected. But you'll have a blue bin, which will be for paper and card. So paper and card will be collected separately so that it's got a better quality. It's a better quality product. It's not risked of being contaminated by any dregs of beer left in the bottom of a beer bottle, for instance, or any remnants of food waste that people have left on their recycling because they haven't washed anything out. You'll remain with your green bin, and your green bin will be for your tins, cans, glass and plastics, and then you will have the black bin that you have now as well. And so they will be collected on a rotating 3-weekly cycle. Okay. with a weekly food waste collection. And so you'll get a 23-litre food waste caddy that I will have for all food waste. So that is any leftovers, any cooked leftovers, meat, cheese, compostables, anything like that. And that will go to anaerobic digestion. And so, Richard, I know you asked, so at the moment, our process for garden waste has always been to encourage home composting. Home composting is by far the most environmentally friendly thing you can do with your garden waste or with your vegetable peelings, etc., because it's not being picked up, it's not being driven anywhere, and it composts in your own home and gives you a usable product if you're a gardener. The alternatives at the moment are to take it to our household waste sites, our household waste and recycling centres, where it is also composted. And at the moment, if you're unable to do that, the only resource we have is the green garden waste bags. And we're really clear at the moment, unfortunately, we just simply do not have the resource to be able to compost that waste. That waste is treated as any other waste in the black bin lorry. And so at the moment, it will be incinerated. So the future is a fortnightly compostable garden waste collection. That will be seasonal, like most garden waste services are. And at the moment, that is likely to be free. We're waiting for clarification from the government. So I think that's, if you're a keen gardener, you know, that's a massive step forward. And it also is a massive improvement on the service we have now. So moving on, I just like to show this graphic. I think we have a lot of people say, oh, 3 weekly, we're never going to be able to cope. We can't do that. 3 weekly is an outrage. This is the makeup of an average Herefordshire bin based upon a waste analysis project that I did in 2019. So we sampled 250 properties, black bins, from across the most commonly found demographics in Herefordshire. So what it shows really, and this is, by the way, the company that we have do it, they collect it and they hand sort through everyone's bin. So they have a full compositional analysis of the contents of those of those 50 bins they collected each sample, okay? So as you can see, just the headline figures for this for me, 8.6% could have been recycled in your green bin at home. So you're taking near enough 10% of that bin out already. And that is simply, I think, people being not bothered really to empty out that moldy pot of hummus in the fridge and put the hummus in the bin or whatever, and put the plastic, give the plastic container a wash out and put that in the recycling. And there's loads of examples like that, 26.5% and 15.8% are food waste. So they're coming out of your bin really. They're either the small amount of compostable waste, and so that near enough 40%, over 40% is coming out of that bin, and that will be collected by the weekly food waste collection. The remaining 37.5% is things that can't be recycled, in our service at the moment. But you're looking at a reasonably small amount of that. So I think really there's not necessarily a capacity drop under the new service anyway. It's just spread out over that 3 weekly period. And also, this is what we're looking at. Us as residents can make little changes to make a massive difference. So I don't think what we're asking really is unreasonable or undoable for residents.
Can I just break in again? We've got 1 or 2 questions.
Yeah,
somebody said, is that the diagram of an average? Is the diagram of the average bin the black bin?
Yes, sorry, the average
bins.
black bin. So we only surveyed a sample. Sorry, I should have been clear on that, everyone. I apologise. We surveyed 250 black bins in Herefordshire. So this is the makeup of the average black bin, so the average non-recyclable bin.
So yes, what you're saying is those recyclables could have gone in the green bin for recycling.
Yeah, so absolutely. So 8.6% could have been recycled in that resident's green bin on average. And then over 40% of that will be taken away by the new weekly food waste collection. So and really, sorry, carry on. No, carry on, Rachel.
I was going to say on that point, Mike Harris has asked, will the food caddies be for rural properties as well?
Yeah, everywhere should get a food caddy. Obviously, there's lots of work to do, and I was just going to go on to what we're doing with the tender process now. But food caddies will be for everyone. And obviously going through that tender process, there'll be consideration given to, you know, what we require the prospective company to do in order to collect from rural properties. Obviously, at the moment, we have a mixture of collection points, we have a mixture of access, you know, and all those things will kind of be worked through with whoever the potential new supplier will be. But yeah, it's likely to be food caddies for everyone, potentially apart from some of our larger flat blocks where there's potentially not the room to give everyone an individual caddy. But I think I'll go on to talk about flats later. But at the moment, it will be food caddy pretty much for everyone. As happens. Sorry, carry on, Richard.
Yeah, thanks, Craig. Can I just come in quickly? I'm looking at 4 bins here. Now, are we expecting to have 4 bins across each household?
Yeah, so
space.
Again, yeah. So, I mean, when I joined in 2014, I think we had over 10,000 properties on our sack service. So I think it was over 10,000 properties having recycling sacks because they said they didn't want bins, they didn't like them, they didn't have enough room. We're down to just, I think it's just over 4 now. Sorry, I need to check that figure. But so we've had many a property move towards bins and find the space for bins because they like them now and they see it away. So I think we'll have a far less issue with residents adopting bins this time. However, there always needs to be alternatives. You know, for instance, for whoever raised rural areas, you know, I grew up in the Black Mountains at Walterstone. So some of my neighbours, you know, might be a mile away from the main road. So the alternative there is reusable bags. So they'll remain on black sacks, for instance, but we're likely to have a reusable bag with a weighted bottom, and they will place their recycling in that, and they will take that up to the road. And what will happen is that will get emptied into the back of the lorry and be left. And that's a service that happens, you know, all over the country, a lot in Wales, but elsewhere. You know, waste management is always about compromise. You know, you'll never get a solution that meets everyone's needs in a way, you know, because we're dealing with a service that runs on, you know, the rule rather than the exception in a sense. You know, you need to make sure that you've got a best size fits all option. And, you know, the bin option that was proposed was the option that was favoured by our residents. Where we have to be, you know, as a local authorities, we have to present a viable alternative, but we also have to draw sort of a reasonably rigorous policies around when we'll apply that framework, because obviously you need to ensure that you're being fair and consistent to residents across the board. So, for instance, if you're in a Victorian terrace and the fact is that you have space for 2 bins at the front, well, yeah, you know, you'll be able to have your 2 bins, your food caddy, and then say a sack for your paper and cards. You know, if you're miles up a farm track, again, you know, and you can't take that down to the roadside, you know, again, it will be reusable bags. And as I mentioned earlier, if you're in a flat above a shop, for instance, in the middle of Hightown, you know, we'll look at the reusable bags option, but it may be that we need to continue with a single-use plastic sack. Obviously, we want to move away from single-use plastic wherever possible, but again, it's about balancing the practicalities of the service for that resident, but also the impact then that putting that waste out for collection has upon the surroundings, you know. So it is just all a balance, really. One thing I would say is, you know, we run a really tight ship now, and I think we're pretty good at getting that balance right with our residents and working with our residents to find that compromise. And it's difficult launching a new service, and we'll go through all of those processes, and some residents, we might not better please everyone, but we'll work with everyone wherever possible to do that, you know. And there'll be a big communications campaign, etc., before the service changes, so residents will know what to you know, what's going on, and how to raise any concerns, etc., or exceptions, you know, with us.
We've had another comment in the chat, which is Susanna has said that she is aiming to put nothing in her plastic bin, which is a wonderful ambition. So is it, she says, but she acknowledges this won't happen straight away. So is it possible to opt for a smaller black bin but I guess there your reusable plastic sack would be an option. As a
so for non-recyclable rubbish, it will be a case of probably remaining with the 180 litre bins we have now. I mean, what we need to consider as well, and is that any new bin size we offer is a new bin that has to be manufactured. So we have a stock of, you know, tens of thousands of these black bins around the county, and it's far better to reuse them in terms of you know, continuation with the service than it would be for us to offer a smaller option for those bins. So I think it will be a case of, you know, certainly maintaining the standard size as a 180 litre black bin that we have now. What we'll do in instance is someone says, for, you know, I have one black sack every 3 weeks, I want my bin removed. I don't know. Again, that's something that will be worked out closer to the time, I suppose, when we're looking at all of those policies and considerations and working with whoever the new supplier for the service is going to be. But any bin that we don't use and keep in service is a bin that has to go away and be recycled, if you see what I mean. And also we have to consider that if we offer multiple sizes, there's the logistical challenges posed by swapping those bins again, and that has a carbon implication and a financial implication for us as well, in terms of I would like a 120 litre bin, for instance. Can I remove my one? Well, yes, but there's a fee involved, for instance, and there's mileage involved in doing that. So at the moment, the way forward will be to keep the 180 litre bin as standard, keep the 240 litre bins as standard for the recycling. And then obviously, like I said, exceptions, we'll have to work those out, I suppose, in the future, and see, you know, see what we're going to do.
And just one last comment on this is Christopher says we compost all our food waste. Can we opt out of food waste and save the council costs?
Yeah, absolutely. Food waste is one of those things where not everyone will participate. And some people probably won't participate because they just don't want to. Others won't participate because they waste minimal and you know, follow the excellent practice that you're following, Christopher, and compost it. So that's excellent. You know, it may be that you want to opt in and think about it for your plate scrapings, for your non-compostable waste, unless you're sort of hot boxing or something like that, you know, so your meat waste or your dairy waste, for instance, stuff that you're not able to potentially compost at home. One thing a food waste collection will do is reduce the amount of food waste we collect, because as soon as people are confronted with, oh my God, I'm wasting that much food in a week, they'll stop wasting food. So that's something that always happens with a food waste collection, is people start collecting it and it tends to tail off in terms of the volumes they collect, partly because people are confronted with what they're wasting. I'll talk to you a bit more later. I'm doing a lot with food waste at the moment, and it's something I'm really passionate about. And I want people to waste as little as possible at home, you know, not just for sort of the waste benefit and the climate benefit, but for the benefit of their pocket as well, you know, in a time of financial hardship for all of us. You know, people can maximize what they buy. It's excellent in terms of making, you know, food go further for them. So just to touch on this before we move on to sort of a bit more fun. So at the moment, we're developing the final procurement documents, and we'll go out to procurement as soon as possible for the new service. But some of the interesting things that we want to do, we want those companies coming to us and hopefully, you know, completing our procurement documents, etc., to include information on how they're going to use electric collection vehicles or non-fossil fuel collection vehicles on our collection rounds, and how they're going to utilize those. So hopefully we'll have electric collection vehicles buzzing around, say, our city centres and market towns, you know, where they can be fully utilized come 2024. However, it's a very rural county, so obviously electric technology doesn't necessarily work for you know, all of our collection rounds, because the range, you know, but as that technology develops, that's something we can develop. So we're looking at charging infrastructure at our depots for those vehicles, and we're looking at that contractor supplying as a minimum, you know, some electric vehicles on any future service. This new service, we use a lot of data. I mean, at the moment, our crews have in-cab systems, so they can report when someone's contaminated their recycling or they've not been able to get down that street. But we want to increase that, so they'll have a lot better in-cab digital systems, and they'll be required to provide us with access to those, so we can know if number 34 has contaminated their recycling bin, and we can offer intervention. We do that on some scales now, but it'll be better in future. We'll be a lot more connected to those crews through that system, and it will really modernize, and that'll help us to again push for service improvements, etc. Something exciting at the moment as well, we're looking to potentially be involved in a collection of soft plastics, a trial for the collection of soft plastics. So we're working through that at the moment, but that's something I just thought it's quite exciting, and obviously if that happens we'll keep an eye out, because we'll do some press and publicity on that. But at the moment those contract documents will be going out, and we'll be starting that contract review process. So just touching on food waste, I've talked about it already, but you'll get little food waste caddies. It's mostly smaller trucks that collect food waste, because the volumes of food waste are far lower. And then we're looking at a local solution for anaerobic digestion for that. So that will be again used to generate power and then the fertilizer from it. So my main role at the moment really is waste reduction projects, and I think Suzanne's on this call, so Suzanne will know what I've been doing with Repair Cafe. It's one of them, and I'll talk about that a bit more later. But really, we need to switch from the mindset of how do I get rid of this to how can I stop wasting or producing waste in the first place, and how can I start reusing. So I always like to sort of just put the waste hierarchy really up, because this is the way all of us need to be thinking about waste at the moment. We can't, continue this sort of culture of a throwaway society, really. Waste is a resource now, and we have to treat it as such. But even better if we don't consume something that we don't need to. So just like to put that up, because I think it's important really that everyone is switched on to that, because there's some really simple things that you can do, to be part of that. I don't know if anyone looks at our waste management website as well, but I did a kind of restructure of our website. So now we kind of have our information pages for our service are kind of separate, and then we have a bespoke section built around reduce, reuse and recycle. So we kind of frame residents' journey around these themes really, rather than just being how do I get rid of something. We try and point them in direction of reuse organizations, or ideas about how they can reduce their waste in the first place. So these are some of the waste pilot projects that me and my colleague Becca have been working on. So there's a few examples there. Suzanne, I hope I don't mind, but I used your logo. So we want more excellent repair cafes like Ledbury. And so if anyone is interested and they want to talk to me about repair cafes, please do email me. I'll send Rachel an email address, but we're going to relaunch our grant funding program for repair cafes. So hopefully we successfully funded one new repair cafe in Herefordshire, and we are going out to try and capitalise on further interest and relaunch more. So there'll be grant funding available for up to £2,500 to start a repair cafe. Repair cafe are phenomenal things. They build community, they reduce waste, they save carbon. And yeah, at the moment, even more pressing, I think, is they provide a low-cost repair option for residents that, in the times we're living in, a small donation to fix your kettle or toaster or radio, for instance, rather than buy a new, is a really important thing that I think repair cafes add at the moment, rather than just sort of doing something really nice by repairing items. So there's that, and if anyone wants any information on that, please do let me know. So there's a picture of some reusable nappies there as well. So I launched a reusable nappy scheme back in April. We've given away 350 vouchers for reusable nappies across Hereford. The scheme was so popular that we gave away all the vouchers we had available in a month. So we closed the scheme, and at the moment we're working through all the different options as to what we do next. But I think that really shows, and that really capitalized on sort of lots of young parents and guardians, being really, really keen on reusables, not just because actually reusables can save them a considerable amount of money. But I surveyed and had sort of over 100 responses to the survey, And one of the main drivers for residents for using them was the environment. So it was amazing to see our parents, really get behind that scheme, and hopefully we'll have something in future, that we can have as sort of a more business as usual scheme. But the impact we've had already is to flood the market really with lots of reusable nappies that people will be donating again once they finish using them to our nappy library, which will mean that prospective parents moving forward will be able to borrow those, and will increase that stock across Herefordshire. So reuse as well. So we're going to start a project over the coming months on increasing reuse across our county. So that will start with sort of looking at our bulk item collection service, looking at our household waste sites, looking at how we can make sure items that are donated there that are a quality to be reused can be accessed by reuse organisations. So at the moment we have reuse containers at our household waste sites where St Michael's and a few other local community groups can collect from. We want to build on that. We want to support our free cycle communities, our free go communities. We want to build on internal reuse as well at the council. My colleagues do a great job at that at the moment as well. If there's furniture available, and trying to give that to schools and community groups and make that accessible to them, and to support other organisations with that. But how can we do that more efficiently? So reuse is something that's coming. And then the food and the flats, I'll just go on to talk to you about in a bit more detail. So this is sort of post-farm gate food waste annually. 7.1 million tonnes are wasted in the home. So I'm on a crusade now to target food waste in the home. And so I was talking to you about the audit earlier with the bin graphic I showed you of the average Herefordshire bin. So we're currently undertaking another analysis at the moment of food waste, or sort of 250 black bins from the same properties across Herefordshire that we collected them from last time. And food waste has gone up in 2 areas, but on average has dropped. So we're looking at food waste, but we really want to target how do we help residents reduce their food waste, and how do we advise them on doing that in the home. The average family, according to Love Food Hate Waste, could save over £60 a month by, not throwing away edible food. So that's really good. That kind of feeds into another project that I'm working on. Well, it's the same project as such, but one of the aims I have is to support our local community fridges and larders. So I don't know how many of you are aware of the wonderful work of like the Living Room or Zero Waste Stall in Ross, or Herefordshire Helpers, or Leominster Food Bank. We have some amazing organisations. The Herefordshire Food Bank do it as well, and I know Ledbury are working on it as well, and we've been talking to Mark Lister from Ledbury Food Bank with surplus food. So surplus food is essentially food that would have otherwise been thrown away, but is still suitable to be eaten. At the moment, our wonderful community organisations are largely reliant on getting those donations from supermarkets and from fair share. Given the supply chain issues that supermarkets have been having, and given the cost of living crisis, they're finding that the surplus that they get from those organisations is less and less, which, you could say, great, there's less food waste about. And in some ways, there is. But that means they can't support the people in need that they need to support. And so one of the things that, I'm Herefordshire born and bred, I'm really, really keen on doing is to help them localise their sources of surplus. So how do we engage with our local farmers, our local growers, our local manufacturers, our hospitality sector, to build a network where any surplus within those systems can be donated to the great organisations we have in order to fulfil their charitable aims and to feed people in need, or like the way that Zero Waste Stall in Ross do it, just reduce food waste, just reduce the mindless food waste that goes on within our systems. So if anyone is interested and want to contact me about it, and they're involved in any of those sectors, we're having an event at the Green Dragon called Food for the Shire. We're working with Herefordshire Food Alliance and the Living Room, so Mel from the Living Room, which is one of our wonderful community larder charities on Commercial Road in Hereford, to develop that event. And we want to bring together our growers, our suppliers, our farmers, our National Farmers Union, you know, all of those players in one room. We're going to have some cooking demonstrations with Surplus, our healthy lifestyle team are doing, and to talk about the issue really. What are the barriers, and how can we localize our surplus? You know, how can we use Herefordshire food to feed Herefordshire people? If anyone's not aware of it as well, just plug the Herefordshire Food Charter. So go on, have a look at the Herefordshire Food Charter. Again, Rachel, I'll send around the links. So the Herefordshire Food Charter is wonderful. You can sign it as a business or an individual. Really, it just looks at sort of a more sustainable and holistic approach to how we can make food in Herefordshire sustainable. You can sign it. The more signatures we get, the better. The more people that are aware of it, the more people that, you know, commit to potentially going to your local butcher or your local greengrocer rather than the supermarket, or wasting less food, or, you know, doing all of those things, donating any apples you have off your apple tree if you're not eating them to the local food bank. You know, anything that we can do to make food in Herefordshire more sustainable, have a look and sign it. That would be really appreciated. And then just Herefordshire is a member of the Sustainable Food Places as well. So that's just a, you know, pioneering network really of partnerships. Obviously the Food Alliance, Herefordshire Council, etc., are all part of those, that just wants to drive best practice to make you know, food aspects of food health and sustainable, you know, make food more sustainable. Hi, Richard.
Yeah, just a bit of a left field question here, Craig.
Yeah, no problem.
It's about connecting with said online social media organisations, but like Free Cycle.
Yeah.
I mean, I've noticed on Free Cycle, people do say, well, if you're not taking the next week or so, it just goes down to the tip. I'm just wondering, you know, there is a connection there, an opportunity there really to fit into that system or support that, the Free Cycle online systems.
In terms of, yeah, so that's something we'll definitely be doing with reuse. With food waste, with food, there's some wonderful platforms called Too Good To Go and Olio. And so they kind of fulfill that niche, I suppose, really. Olio is more of a peer-to-peer platform, I suppose, really. And then Too Good To Go, I don't know if anyone's seen it, but Too Good To Go really allows businesses to list what surplus they've got and then open that up to app users to come and collect. So I live in Bromyard at the moment, so Legs of Bromyard, you know, famous kind of deli butchers, you know, they'll put stuff out on that at the end of the day, for instance, that they need to get rid of. So there's that kind of option. And I think there's something definitely, you know, maybe Free Cycle or maybe sort of a more open platform as well. It is certainly a really good idea, Richard. I've made a note of that. Thank you. And so lastly, I just wanted to touch on one of our flats projects. I suppose it's not necessarily as relevant to you guys if you don't live in a flat, but I just think it's really interesting. Some of the sort of, I suppose, innovation or some of the way that we are looking at change and looking how to support our residents to make recycling as easy as possible. So this is a sort of a flat block or a few photos and some flat blocks at the top in Hereford. It's the same block. So you can see they're the bins they currently have. So 2 green bins for general recycling. As you can see, it's not great. They're overflowing. Everything's contained within a bag, which, you know, not ideal at all. We want all our recycling loose. Black bins are overflowing as well. So the next phase is what we've done. You can see there's brand new signage up there. So we're putting the new signage up, and then you can see the brand new bins they're going to have at the bottom. So those bins have got a different kind of aperture, a different lid on them, which means that incorrect items are harder to put in them, but it means that it's still easier than lifting a large lid for residents to recycle. So that's one of the projects we're in. It's based really on some success that Resource London's had with their recycling project that they've done, and we're kind of expanding on that because we're trialing it with the twin stream service that will be introduced for the rest of the county in 2024. So this gives us a really good opportunity to learn about our flats, because flats are the most difficult residents to get to recycle, because it only takes one person doing something wrong when the bins are communal to affect the quality of recycling for everyone. And so this is a really innovative project that we're doing to try and see how we can increase recycling rates and quality amongst all of our residents that live in our flat blocks. So just a bit of background, 3,850 flat properties across Herefordshire that have communal bins like this. So it's really big for us to be able to try and improve the quality, because that's a significant portion of the residents. And lastly, I'm not sure if anyone's seen this yet. It's something that we will be focusing on pushing more. But we launched our Getting It Right recycling campaign. So if anyone has looked at the website and you go on our recycling pages, you'll see it. And if anyone's seen us out at one of the events we've done, or if anyone's seen their bin lorry go past with one of the Agrippa panels on it, so they're the panels on the side of the lorry. Basically, this is a 12-month communications campaign, and it focuses on the 4 main contaminants that we find in our recycling bins. And so are, believe it or not, plastic film, packets and pouches, which is obviously semi-understandable, I think, because residents think that they can recycle those. And so that theme ran from May to July this year. And we advise residents that we don't want those in our recycling bins, and to take them to the supermarket. The current theme is food. Sadly, residents still put food in their recycling bins. And that runs to the end of October. So we've been doing some communications events, etc. along that. We did the River Carnival, various different things to get the message out there about reducing food waste and not putting it in the recycling bins. Our next theme is batteries. So batteries are the worst for us. I mean, like I said, lorry fires are a massive issue for us if people put lithium-ion batteries in. So camera batteries, laptop batteries, and small WE. So what we call that small WE is waste electrical. So radios, hair dryers, microwaves. And advising people that they can take those back to the supermarkets, take those back to Currys. Often, Currys will offer a discount, even if it's only £5 on a new purchase if you return an item to them. And then lastly, Focus 4, which will run next year, is nappies. Sadly, we still do find nappies in our recycling bins. So really, it's just kind of a basic communications campaign, but to try and improve the quality of the recycling that we get. And then obviously we'll develop further communication campaigns as we progress towards a new service, with the aim of informing residents about those changes that are coming. So yeah, that's it for me. Thank you very much for listening, everybody, and happy to go through questions now. And as I said to Rachel and Richard earlier, obviously if there's anything I can't answer now, by all means we can send the list over to me, and I can put together some answers and send back to you to distribute. Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Craig. That was a really interesting talk. Obviously lots and lots going on.
Yeah.
If I start by running through one or two of the questions that have come into the chat. George has queried in that last bit you were just saying about what you're focusing on, the contaminants. You said pouches and packets, and he's queried that.
I suppose if what we mean by that is any sort of flexible plastics, I suppose, like a carrier bag, like the top of a punnet of strawberries or a microwave meal, like the inside of a cornflakes or cereal box, that flimsy plastic. We used to say, and I suppose the test really is, if you can scrunch it up in your hand and ball it up in your hand and it recoils slowly, we don't want that. So the plastic needs to have a rigidity to it. If it's like a carrier bag, or if it's like, I'm trying to think of like a pet food pouch. I don't know if anyone's got cats or dogs, the little pouches, the plastic kind of silvery lined pouches that pet food comes in. Yeah, we can't have that. Sorry, I'll stop sharing my screen.
Yes, and those could be taken to the supermarket.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you want to dispose of them at home, so if you want to report on them at home, so you want to dispose of it at home, that goes in the black bin. If you want to recycle them, by all means take them to the supermarket. And I think it's really good that the supermarkets, at the end of the day, they're the point of sale. I think it's really good that they should take some responsibility as well for, you know, being a return point for that packaging.
Okay, and Sammy commented that she was very popular to miss out on the nappy recycling scheme. Obviously she'd be keen to take that up if you do restart that scheme.
Absolutely. I mean, have a look at the website and drop me an email by that, because I've got a list of anyone that's contacted me since, so I can contact them directly when we're relaunching to give them prior notice of it. So if you're able to do that, please, that would be great. So have a look at the website, drop us an email, and I'll I'll get in touch with you then.
Okay, and I think you've answered Christopher's question on what's the definition of soft plastics, but Sue has raised a query that I think is quite interesting. What about aluminium foil?
So foil is a no at the moment.
Right.
So if you would like to recycle foil, it can go to the household waste and recycling centres. It currently can't be recycled in the green recycling bin, and really it's a volume issue. So the volume of foil that we would get makes it very difficult to store before the volume is significant enough to get an onward processor for it. Half the time that isn't cleaned. People won't clean it before they pop it in their bins as well. So all it does is serve to attract vermin and that kind of thing as well. So it is kind of a volume issue for us, but they will accept it at household waste and recycling centres. So if you want to do that, by all means, back it up. And if you go for any other reason, take it to a household waste and recycling centre.
Would just go in the general metal recycling?
Yeah, so it can, or some HRCs have got the designated containers for it. So it will just be a case of asking staff on site, off the top of my head. I can't remember which is which, sorry.
Okay. Ruth has said Herefordshire Reuse and Recycling Group will accept aluminium.
I think there are some, so it may well be as well. Have a look in your local area. If there's any groups sort of running those localised recycling schemes, potentially they will take it as well.
I mean, I'm old enough to remember when Blue Peter collected silver foil, but that rather dates me. And we've had a couple of questions about commercial customers and their waste. Sue again asked, do you plan to roll out the same system to commercial customers for paper and card waste?
Yeah, absolutely. So hopefully, so that will include food waste and the separated recycling. Unfortunately, at the moment, our commercial waste and recycling service is limited based upon, so that the recycling service is limited based upon the household waste capacity. So we only have the capacity within the collection lorries. So unfortunately, you know, unless a new lorry was on the road, for instance, with the, and that's a significant additional cost, we base that around the capacity we have. So we're only able to offer up to 5 240-litre recycling bins for our commercial customers at the moment, or the pink recycling bags that you might have seen around. In future, that will change, and we hope to be able to offer a far more comprehensive recycling service to our commercial waste customers.
Okay, and an early comment on commercial waste, which actually, Jonathan, it's your comment. I'm not quite sure I understand it. Are councils treated as business? How should councils get rid of green waste? So I'm not, if Jonathan.
So garden waste.
Yes.
Yes, he would be. In answer to that, I think.
Again, he's talking about parish councils, or yes.
Yeah. Yes, you would be.
Right.
And that's just under the, you know, the Environment Act 1990 and the controlled waste regulations, really. So it's the same as a charity. A charity is treated as a business in waste law. The law's it's one thing with waste, I think, is the law's reasonably robust and it's reasonably clear, I suppose. And so it's quite nice and to have that sort of, there's less ambiguity, I suppose, in some areas, which does make it quite nice.
And then Ruth has said, how can the crew report on contaminated recycling? Our crew don't even look inside the green bins.
They really should. and so by all means, please do get in touch with us if you want to either drop me an email or go onto the website and report that. The crew should conduct an initial inspection of the black and green bin before they empty it. Obviously, they can see what's in the bottom of the bin. So I've had instances before now where flats have had tins of paint, in the bottom of the bin near the end of a collection round, and it's contaminated tons and tons of recycling. So the crew can only, conduct a visual inspection, but that's something that would have made me very angry in my old waste and recycling officer's job, because they really should be just having a visual check. Okay, so if you're happy to share even just a postcode area so I can work out what crew it is, please do let me know, and I can raise that with the contractor, or get one of my waste and recycling officer colleagues to raise that with the contractor. Okay.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you. And Anne and Vivian have asked, is the food waste going to include bones? Yeah,
I think it will.
Right.
So the anaerobic digestion process should be able to deal with that as well. That's something, again, all of the advice will come out at the time, but I'm pretty sure it will.
Okay. And Ruth has also said Hereford Food Bank can accept fresh food if they're phoned in advance.
Yeah, so Hereford Food Bank are on obviously the list of Mel at the living room where I'm working with has a really good relationship with the Herefordshire Food Bank. And I know I was speaking to the county advisor for the NFU the other day as well, and she sort of brokered some relationships between farmers and the food bank. So the food bank will certainly be in our plans, as other food banks will, with anything we kind of do with this project. And it's just about, I suppose, trying to support them if possible to be able to store any of the the sort of surplus food and stuff, because some food banks aren't often set up as much for storing fresh food over dried and stuff like that. So it's something they're working to support them with. For instance, with Ledbury, we're looking at ways to be able to cook surplus. So for instance, if they get a glut of apples, how they can cook that, turn that into meals and freeze it, so they can give out a hot meal or a frozen meal that someone can go home and pop in a microwave, for instance, and warm it up as a really efficient way of giving themselves a hot meal rather than having to cook something from scratch in their home. So we're trying to be as innovative as possible, I suppose, and just working out what the community can do and how we can really, I don't like council-led community development in a way. I want to support the community to do what they want to do and fill in the gaps and provide support wherever possible, and that's something that we're looking at.
Okay. Heather has asked about compostable packaging. Will that be accepted in food waste?
We will hopefully, yes, I think so at the moment. It's not always the easiest, because compostable doesn't always mean compostable. Often means they'll break down into thousands of little bits and flow everywhere rather than. So we're looking at what liners we will provide at the moment. And so I think the short answer is yes. Obviously, we can be clearer on that in the future, and we're looking at what type of compostable or what type of liners we will provide, whether they're a paper or whether they're a compostable, and that'll be a discussion with the processor as well.
Okay. Jonathan said, are there any plans to include hard plastics at the household waste centres as they do in Wales?
Can you clarify what you mean, please, regarding that? Because obviously, are we talking sort of children's toys, the washing up bowl, that kind of harder plastic?
Jonathan, are you there? Can you
unmute? There's various things. There's quite a few things which I collect and have to take to Landod at the moment, because the Kington site doesn't collect those sort of hard plastics.
Okay.
Garden furniture, stuff which I can't take to the Kington site.
Yeah, no problem. It's something I can raise. I'm not sure if I'm honest, but that's something that obviously we want to increase every option possible for reuse. I suppose it's just a discussion, well, not reuse, for recycling in that scenario. It's just a discussion that we would need to have with with the service provider and to see if there is an option and if they potentially have an outlet for that, a processor for that.
And George has said he's got a question stroke suggestion for Craig. George, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I tend to sometimes think, well, you should be able to bloody recycle this, so I put it in the green bin. But I think what would be a good idea if you get them to put a sticky label on every green bin in Herefordshire, so that rather than trying to look for the leaflet which was posted to us a year ago up on the website, if you go to the bin and there's a label that says, don't put in nappies.
This is something we have. You know, this is something we thought of, and it is just sort of a cost implication at the moment in order to do that. You know, it's over 70,000 stickers, say, you know, we have 90,000 properties, however many thousands on bins. And it is a cost of either the, you know, the producing the stickers, posting those out to that many residents, or paying an organisation to potentially stick those on. And so unfortunately, it's just something that, you know, given budget constraints and stuff, it isn't necessarily feasible to do that. What crews should be doing at the moment, if there is anything incorrect in there, is tagging the bin. And so we do have tags, so we kind of work on the exception, not the rule, in a sense of if there is, say, I don't know, someone's put a carpet rug in their recycling bin or food waste, they should stick a tag on that, mark on what the contaminant was, so it tells the resident, report it on their digital system, and then our business as usual team, my waste and recycling officers, send out a letter to that resident to say, here's a guide, this is what you can and can't recycle. The thing with the stickers as well is, unfortunately, stickers wear off as well. The quality of stickers is great, they don't always last. So we've had mixed, you know, we do have them, we do give them out, we do use them where we're targeting areas where the recycling quality might be poor. But unfortunately, because they're out in the weather all the time, even if you buy the weather resistant, good quality stickers, it's not, if you stick them on the lid, they get battered by the wind and rain. If you stick them on the front of the bin where the resident will see them, they scrape on the lorry when the lorry's listed. So it's one of those things where we love the idea, we've talked about it a lot ourselves, but the practicalities and the cost involved of it aren't always, you know, you have to weigh up those, you know.
Okay, that was interesting.
Rupert, thank you, George.
Rupert has asked, are staff at recycling centres incentivised to divert reusable waste, e.g. cycles or furniture?
No, not at the moment, I don't believe. I think they are certainly not financially, I don't believe. But obviously they are incentivised in terms of, you know, they're trained and they're instructed to do that. And they're instructed to give advice on, you know, that could go over there to be reused, or that needs to go in that container, etc. But that is something I think that goes on elsewhere, and it's something that I can again raise for the future, you know.
Okay, and Ruth has asked, if bottles are taken to the bottle bank, there's less contamination. Does the council get more money from glass from bottle banks than it costs to collect it and send it off?
They're collected by the same lorry. So no, the only reason we have bottle banks in place really is because we try to have them in areas where residents might have a recycling sack service. So for instance, you know, in Hereford, there's Sainsbury's and there is Morrison's, for instance, and in, you know, I'm in Bromyard, there's one in the Conquest Theatre car park. So where residents don't have recycling bins and they're on a recycling sack service, they can't recycle their glass because, as you saw, there's an element of hand sorting. So if it's in a bag and the guys are having to pull open that bag, it poses a cut list to those people on the line. And so we don't allow glass in recycling sacks, and so we try to provide them in areas where people would otherwise not have access to be able to recycle glass. So that's why they're there, really.
So as somebody who has a plastic recycling sack, because of limitations on the road, we always have to take our glass to the bottle banks.
And again, that's something in future that reusable bags may well prevent. So if you're able to have a reusable bag in the limited space, you can obviously put glass in that, because the crew can pick that up and empty it loosely into the back of the lorry, rather than it having, you know, it's loose, it's not contained within a bag then, so that prevents the cut risk further down the line.
Oh, so that's good, yes. And Ginny has raised an interesting point. What happens to waste bins in communal areas, e.g. park, street?
So that contract is totally separate, so that comes under the Balfour Beatty contract.
And is that content sorted at all?
No. So it's a very, very, very difficult thing to do on street recycling, because as you can imagine, people don't really pay attention. And so even if you have a designated recycling bin, for instance, in Hightown or in a park, you will also get a half-eaten hamburger or a bag of dog waste in with that as well. So it's a very, very difficult thing to do, but I imagine Herefordshire will try it at some point. I'm sure it will. But it isn't something that our remit is the commercial waste collection service and the household waste collection service. Any sort of litter bins, that's the responsibility of Balfour Beatty with the street cleansing contractor.
So one would be advised to take one's rubbish home and put it in the correct.
Absolutely. I mean, that would always be my advice anyway. I mean, it's better to leave the place as you find it, isn't it, than you know, potentially litter. Yeah, it is something that's very difficult to do, you know, because unfortunately contamination can be high.
Nick, who joined the meeting a little bit late, says, will recycling bins continue? Will recycling sacks continue to be available free to those people without green bins?
So in future, hopefully, you'll be suitable for the reusable bags, and the reusable bags will be provided to you. So recycling sacks, hopefully, for the vast amount of our properties, will become a thing of the past, and we'll move away from that single-use plastic. So it will be a case of having the provision of reusable bags rather than, you know, having single-use plastic sacks.
What's the lifespan of a reusable bag?
It depends. I don't know, and it's something that we've talked in other, you know, in sense we've talked to other local authorities about, but it's still, you know, far less arduous in terms of resource use than the single-use plastic sacks.
Okay. I had one question, which was, I read that you were going to start collecting food waste by bicycle.
Yeah, so that is something that has been requested. There'll be, we're certainly looking into all innovative solutions for collection of food waste within a certain proportion of the city centre, and that is one of the options that is being considered.
Well, we're coming towards the end of our time, because the meeting's due to finish at 7. Does anyone have any further questions or comments or anything? Have I missed anything from the chat that somebody's put in there and I haven't read out? Maybe just pipe up rather than putting it in the chat. Well, if there are no more questions, I found that a really interesting talk. I find it quite inspirational what Herefordshire Council are doing. You're obviously got lots and lots of new ideas going on, which is wonderful to hear. One thing you did say earlier on, you can arrange a visit to the Envirosol.
Yeah, do you want to email me, Rachel, or I'll email you? So if you'd like to go, yeah, by all means. So we have an education officer. We have a new education officer, so that's a joint with Worcestershire. Essentially, they work for Seven Waste, the provider. And so, yes, by all means, you can arrange a visit. It's probably likely to be in the school holidays for a group like you, because obviously school visits happen. But I'll send you over their details. She's changed. It's a new staff member recently, so I can't remember her name off the top of my head. But yeah, by all means, you can have a look around and go and see the process for yourself, and they will obviously give you a lot more information as well.
About everybody else, but I think I find that really interesting. Maybe we have an HGN away day.
Yeah, by all means. I think it's really good for people to do, because you kind of understand some of the reasons why we ask for certain things in more detail, because you've seen it for yourself. It's always hard, isn't it, hearing us talk about it or seeing a video. So to see the process for yourself, I think is really good.
Yes, yes. Well, certainly I'll put that in the newsletter. If there is interest, we can get a group together. I think that'd be really interesting. So anyway, everything that's turning up in the chat now is really big thank you to Craig, and I'm sure everybody thinks the same. Really been interesting. Thank you very much. And yeah, if you'd like to show your appreciation, and this will be recorded, so it will go on the HGN website, and Craig is going to email me across lots of links and any queries in the chat that he needs to follow up. So thank you very much, Craig.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
So yeah, if you can just let me know if there's any questions that you want more information on, and if you can send me a list, that makes it a lot easier for me. Is that okay?
Yes, certainly. Yes.
Brilliant. No, thank you very much, all. Have a good evening.
Well, thank you.
Cheers, Craig.
Take care. Bye. Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Such a good talk, gosh.
Inspirational guy. People like that about the place taking care of our rubbish.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody, and see you again.